Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're here in the kitchen again, and today we're going to make another bagel because we do love bagels around here. We're going to make a French toast bagel. This has a lot of egg, a lot of cinnamon, and maple syrup in it just to make it really sweet and really delicious. So let's get started. The ingredients are simple, okay? Simple, simple, simple. The first thing you want is 1 cup of water. Okay, just 1 cup. Easy. Then you want a 1/4 cup or thereabouts of maple syrup, okay? About a 1/4 cup. This will give you a really nice flavor. You're also going to want 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Just a little vanilla. 1 egg. You're going to want 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. You can increase that a little bit if you'd rather have more cinnamon. No big deal. You're going to want 1 teaspoon of salt. Any salt you have. This is just table salt, but you could use kosher salt or Himalayan. It doesn't matter. 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Remember, tightly packed when you're measuring brown sugar. Then we're going to need 3½ cups of flour. Let's try and do this without spilling. Ha, there we go. Yay, we did it. Getting better at it. A little bit of spillage, don't worry about that. And finally, 1 teaspoon, 1 heaping teaspoon of yeast. I'm using bread machine yeast because I am going to use the bread maker to make the dough. Now you can of course make the dough by hand or you can use your mixer. It doesn't really matter. So the bread maker allows you to mix it, knead it, and then go through the first rise without you having to do anything. That's why I'm opting to use the bread maker today. But you can, of course, mix and knead either by hand or with your mixer and then set it aside to rise for about an hour for the first rise. As long as you mix, knead, and get through the first rise before the next step, we're fine. All right, so we're going to stick this in the bread maker. It'll take about an hour and a half in my bread maker for this to be dough that we can work with. So we'll come back as soon as this dough is ready to use. All right, our dough is ready. Now this can be a bit of a sticky dough. So what you want to do is have some flour underneath it and kind of just turn it over and press it a few times, just so that you have enough flour that it doesn't stick. Then you're going to want to take a rolling pin. I'm using this adjustable rolling pin that has these rings so I can control how thin I roll it. So in this case, I'm rolling it to 3/8 of an inch. That's the green circle there. So we're just going to roll that out. Okay, because these are bagels. You can shape these by hand as well, but I'm going to shape these using a bagel cutter. I really like using bagel cutters. I find them really useful. There we go. So don't get too worried about thickness. You don't want them super thin. So I'm rolling them to 3/8 of an inch. Okay, and then after that, I'm letting the dough retract again. So I roll it out and then I just let it kind of pop back. Okay, because I don't want these too thin. So we're just going to roll it out just a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to use our cutter and just press and twist. Okay, because it's a round cutter, you can twist. So that's what we're going to do. This bagel cutter, you can get it on Amazon. I will provide a link to it because I know it's not always easy to find a bagel cutter. It's also called a donut cutter. So you just take your bagels and lay them on a cookie sheet that has some kind of liner. And the reason you need a liner is these do get a little bit sticky sometimes, and that's fine, but you just want a liner. Okay. So I got 5 out of that, and I'm going to re-roll my dough scraps and get another few. So I'll probably get between 8 and 10 out of this batch. You will, of course, get more bagels if you make smaller bagels. So there are smaller sizes of this, but I like a standard size bagel. Here we go. So we're just going to re-roll that. I'm not going to do that on camera. You don't need me to do that on camera because you just watched me roll it out and cut some bagels out of it. So what we're going to do now is let your bagels sit for a few minutes. Go get yourself a small pot of water. Fill it about halfway and set it on the stove to boil. While you're waiting for that to boil, you just want to let your bagels relax on their pan. Okay, don't touch them, don't squish them, just let them relax. They don't need to fully rise because you are going to boil them, which will help them puff anyway. So set those aside, get your pot of water boiling, and we will come back just as soon as it's boiling. All right, our water is now boiling. You just need a small pot. It doesn't have to be very big. You could use a slightly larger one if you want, but then it takes longer to boil. So our little small pot, we're going to boil up our bagels. So to that pot, we're going to add 2 tablespoons or thereabouts of honey. We need it for the water so that we can sweeten up the bagels. I know they're already sweet, but that's okay. Stir that up a little bit. Then we're going to start taking our bagels one at a time, drop them in the water. So you want to boil them for 30 seconds to a minute per side. Okay, so you just want to kind of let them do their thing. There we go. So 30 seconds to a minute per side, and then you can flip it over. And you do want to make sure they float. If they're not floating, they're not cooked. Now if it seems like, well, they're not cooked enough. They don't have to be fully cooked. If it seems like it's stuck to the bottom, actually get in there with your slotted spoon and wiggle it off the bottom, because you do want to make sure it's floating. So 30 seconds to a minute per side. Come on. Flip over. I used a kind of a small pot, so flipping is kind of a little bit of a trick right now. But so you're going to boil them 30 seconds to a minute per side, no more than 2 minutes total boiling time. The longer you boil, the chewier they will be, but there's a limit to how chewy you want a bagel. Okay, so no more than 2 minutes total time. So we're going to take this one out, put a new one in, and you're just going to do exactly that until you're finished with all your bagels. Now I have 10 bagels here, so with my bagels, I've made them rather large so they'll be nice and hearty because we use them for our breakfast. That's why we like French Toast Bagels. So if you do smaller bagels, you will have more of them, or if you do even larger bagels, you'll have less. So you can decide entirely how many bagels you have. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't affect anything. Okay? So I'm going to finish boiling these bagels, and then I'll show you what to do right after that. You don't have to watch me boil all 10. That's a little bit boring. So we're going to come back when we are ready to top these bagels right before we bake them. All right, so our bagels have been boiled and now they're ready for their topping. The first thing we need is 1 egg. And you're just going to take your basting brush and just bash that egg up a little, and then just kind of whip it a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is just to hold on our topping. So you're just going to go and brush the tops of your boiled bagels with a little bit of egg. Okay, just 1 egg, beat it up, and then just give everything a nice brush. Okay, because these are French Toast Bagels. What would they be without a little bit of egg on them? Because that's what you do to make French toast, isn't it? If you're wondering about this little tiny bagel that I just brushed, that one is going to be for the dogs. That was the remnants of the dough, and I always like to make a little bagel for the doggies, even though they'll probably have more bagels than that, because they're nuts. Okay. 2 more. That buzzer is my oven preheating to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what you want to cook these bagels at. So preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and get yourself some cinnamon sugar. Now cinnamon sugar is really easy to make. Take about half a cup of just plain sugar, and then you want to add between 1 and 4 tablespoons of cinnamon to your sugar. How much is really up to you. I only added 1 tablespoon here because we're doing a light cinnamon sugar, but you can do a darker cinnamon sugar just by adding more cinnamon. So take that sugar, sprinkle on the top, be generous, be generous. It's okay to miss, it's not that big a deal. There we go. Be generous with your sugars. Okay, nice and sugary. Because remember, French toast bagel, what do we do with French toast bagels? We put cinnamon on them. Or I do. Can't speak for everyone, but I'll be honest, I put a lot of cinnamon on my French toast. There we go. Okay, now we're going to bake these at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 to 25 minutes. So I like about 23 minutes, but 20 to 25 depending on how dark you want them. So we'll come back and take a look at the finished product. And there you have it. Delicious, sweet French toast bagels. They're absolutely perfect for your breakfast. They're perfect at any time of day. I absolutely adore these, and we make them often because they're quite perfect and delicious. So I hope you enjoyed making French toast bagels with us here today at Andersen Acres, and we'll see you tomorrow.